Brian, as always, after a transfer window, we do a catch-up. What is your assessment of this window as a whole?
I think there's been quite a turnaround in players. I think with the releases we did at the end of last season, it was always going to be a fraught, busy window. I think in total we've got 10 have re-signed or signed new players, including the loans, etc. Plus obviously Sean Wally had an option which he got at the end of last season. So yeah, I mean, I think it was probably disappointing certainly in the last week, because I've got to say that, you know, Steve Cottrell and Keith Burke worked so hard, made so many calls. You know, it was just constantly on the phone trying to get targets in, and I think there is a wee bit of frustration in the last week that we didn't get some of the targets in at the end. But at the end of the day, we've done a lot of business this window. It was always going to be like that because of the turnaround in players, because of the numbers that got released last season. So I think, yeah, we've done well. We managed to get a few early, which helped, and we've got a few late, as we always do. I think the only thing that we're all a wee bit disappointed that perhaps, you know, a couple towards the end that didn't come in the end up, which would have actually enhanced the squad.
I know there's a plethora of reasons why you might miss out on deals, but is the fact we're competing with some absolutely huge teams in this league and in other leagues quite difficult for the club?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, and I think League One this year, with the number of big clubs that we have, and the way agents will work is that they'll call all the big clubs in the leagues first to see if they can move their players there first, because they know the wage demands, and then they work their way down the league based on wage structures and where you are. If it's into August, they'll look at the league table as well, which obviously doesn't help with recruitment either, if I'm honest, you know, because we didn't do so well at the first few games. It's some of the money in League One this year is just unbelievable. I've never seen it like this before. Some of the clubs are throwing massive amounts of money at players that, as I say, I've never seen before. So yeah, it's always difficult to compete, but it's difficult for a lot of clubs to compete. And you know, when you look at it, the number of big hitters we've got this year, I mean, even the likes of Wigan, who are an ex-Premier League team, but you know, if the money that I've been told is correct in some of their signings, you know, Wigan as a club, yes, they've got a big stadium, they're an ex-Premier League team, but they've not got a much bigger fan base than we have, albeit maybe slightly bigger. But I mean, some of the money that's getting thrown about there, you know, when they were in administration, a year and a half ago, I'm just like, wow, what's going on here? But I think because the salary cap's gone, that's opened it up for so many clubs just to throw as much money as they can at it. And it's not just Sunderland and Ipswich. You know, there's quite a number of teams this year that have spent big, and you know, we have as well. To be honest with you, I think, you know, some of the wages this year as well, we've pushed it as far as we can, and as we always do with the budget, to try and make sure we get players here. But it's becoming increasingly competitive to try and cope with the wage demands that everybody's looking for.
I know we always try to evolve as a club. Has the wage budget been different to previous years?
No, not at all. No, we always try and push the wage budget as far as we possibly can, and it's at the same level as it always was. So, you know, I think Steve's probably alluded to that before. You know, there's this misconception that we've reduced the wage bill. We've been able to actually have the wage bill at the same levels this year. As I've said before, with the salary cap management protocol, SCMP, that the EFL say you can spend 60% of your turnover on wages. So we push that as far as we possibly can. We've had no transfer fees, or when we set the budget, we had no transfer fees coming in. So before we've had drip fed payments from, you know, Connor Goldson, Ryan Woods, you know, etc., etc. And that's why it was so important that the season ticket holders got behind us. You know, had we not had the level of season tickets renewals and season ticket sales, we would have had to look at the budget. But the fans have got behind the club and actually supported us to allow us to actually have that budget at the level we can get. We have got to for the manager to spend how he wants, and that's how we believe at this football club, that, you know, if the chairman or myself or any of the board members get involved in signings, then that's not right. At the end of the day, we provide, it's our job to provide a budget for the manager and Keith to work on, to work their way around that, to spend how they want to do it and what they feel value for players. It's completely up to them. We don't interfere with the football side. All we do is set the budget.
This is more of a hypothetical question, so I don't know the specifics, of course, but for example, if there's money left unspent in this window, does that get carried on into the next window, or is that a fresh approach?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, if there was money left in the budget, then every week from now till January is a saving on the budget. So that money saved plus every week beyond that. And I'm not saying that was potentially, the idea behind it, but sometimes you would maybe sign a player in, for example, in August, and you've actually saved 6-7 weeks' money, which actually allows you to pay a bit more. But at the end of the day, for Steve and Keith, it was always about trying to get the right players in at the right time. And as I said before, how competitive it is really hard. But yeah, I mean, we always try and make money available, as much money as we possibly can. And it's up to Steve and Keith how they spend the money and how they distribute it. But to answer your question, yeah, that money, if there's savings in the budget, then that they then transfer in, which obviously there will be savings in the budget because we didn't get a couple of players in at the last minute that we had budgeted for, so that'll get rolled out onto January as well. So, and to be fair to the chairman and the board, we've always tried to support managers, whether it's fees or whatever it is, to try and assist that, to try and put the best team on the pitch for Shrewsbury Town Football Club.
It's kind of public knowledge that we got a good fee for Ollie Norburn. Is that the case with that? Will that get rolled over now?
Ollie Norburn's deal with Peterborough, as with most football clubs, when they sign, they tend to spread the payments over the term of the contract. So whilst Ollie had 10 months left of his contract to go, I felt that the fee, that by the contract I'm not allowed to say the fee, but other parties might decide that they want to put the fee out, which isn't necessarily always the truth. And it's in staged payments. So at the end of the day, whilst that's not ideal, you always try, when you're selling a player, you want the money up front so you've got it in the bank. However, there is also a benefit in actually having the stage payments. Now for us as a football club, having the payments spread, it means then that money can then go into our budget, because back to the salary cap management protocol, if we've got that money spread over the next X number of years, then that's 60% of that we can use towards the wage budget for future years to make sure we're competing, not just this season but in future seasons as well.
This is probably more a question for the manager, but is free agent something the club is actively looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith has drawn up a list of all ones that are available just now, and he'll be in discussions with Steve to see if there are any free agents out there that would be of interest to him to add to the squad. As I said before, that's between Steve and Keith, how for them to decide on what, if there's anything there that they want to do. But yes, that's, I'm sure it'll be under consideration, put it that way.
A lot of people ask the question, how do you look at kind of investment into the club, whether that be from an external kind of businessman or business person? How do you look at kind of an external investment into the club?
Well, I always believe that football should be sustainable. And yes, there are clubs out there whereby people pump money in every year for nothing just because it's their football club. But I don't necessarily think that's right, because when that person then moves away from the club, how many clubs have we seen before that have thrown, a sugar daddy or whatever you might want to call it, comes in and throws money at a football club, and then what happens 2 or 3 years' time when that person leaves, when that's not there anymore? Then suddenly, you've got a really good team in the pitch, and then 2 years later, everybody drifts away because the team's not the same, because there's no one, that investor then goes away. We always believe that, and I always believe too, that football should be run properly, which is why we've got one of the best finances in the EFL. We try and live within our means. We try and push any profit we make, any money we can, that we can do anything to increase, we put that back into the push the wage budget as far as we can. And considering what we've been through in the last 18 months with COVID, and you've seen the accounts to 2019, June 2020, where we lost £720,000, and in the year to June 21, it's going to be far worse than that. When we had a full 12 months of COVID. But despite that, we've been able to cope with that. We've lost a hell of a lot of money over that period of time, dipped into reserves that we never wanted to do, because that was all about investment for the future and how we can generate more income to then put more money back into the football squad. But we've been able to sustain that, and I just believe, going back to the question, for me, football needs to be sustainable. It's all very well somebody coming in and going, well, we'll give you X amount for your wage bill for the next 2 years, but what happens in the third year?
Just a final question from me. There was some noise recently indicating that we were offered £1 million for Ollie Norburn. I think I can comfortably say that that's false, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it beggars belief, some things that come out of people's mouths sometimes, and it's, I can't quite believe it. I actually had to think, have I missed this somewhere, have I missed an offer, and I actually looked back to see what the offer was, and again it was an offer which came in payments over 3 years, of 100 grand a year, which was the guaranteed money. On top of that, there was other contingent payments, which included a lot of money for that club getting to the Premier League, and a lot of money for that club retaining its Premier League status. So yeah, spin it however you like, but it still wasn't £1 million, even if that club got to the Premier League and stayed in it for another year. So listen, sometimes these things come out and people want to blow their own trumpet a little bit and exaggerate the truth, but what you'll find with us is we'll always tell you the truth.